Welcome to Off the Shelf. I'm your host, Yvonne Wolf. Today, our special guest is returning author Evelyn Lee with her second book, If Your Resume Could Talk. Welcome back, Evelyn.
Thank you, Yvonne.
Yes, and with your background in HR, this book must have been in incubation for a long time, would you say?
How did you know, Yvonne? That is so true. Yvonne, with I've worked in human resources for many years, and over the course of time, I've had many conversations with people who were, certainly, looking at jobs, but then they were also interested in, career opportunities for themselves and exploring different options. And so with that, it's been on my mind. Like you said, it's been incubating for many years to find a way to communicate the things that I've had the opportunity to speak with people, one-on-one with or in different meetings, but yet I wanted the information to reach a larger audience as well, because people were always telling me they would see friends or neighbors who had an interest in career exploration and what's next. And so that's what really prompted me to write this book.
So is it just for the first time job applicant, but more for people who are trying to change the direction in their careers?
It's really for a broad audience, for all of the individuals you described. Whether you're a student, an early career professional, or you're looking at a change later in your career, everyone's always thinking for themselves, right? What's next? And so this book really provides a broad enough context that anyone can really use the information that's provided.
Well, I guess I'm curious, right? I hear so much about the resumes have to pass the computer level or the reading of it. So can it be personal enough? I mean, if let's say the screening doesn't pick up the right words.
Right. That's important. That's one component. Certainly people often focus on like the keywords that are important to put in their resume. But it's also important because there's ultimately a reader of the resume. There's ultimately a conversation, an interview that happens. And so the book really prepares someone for those conversations because it really probes into questions that people might want to ask themselves or ask of others.
Yes. I also heard before that the more you know about yourself, the better you are at finding the career that you want.
Right. It's about finding, you're absolutely right, it's about finding the career that you're looking for, but it also, when you know yourself, you're also able to talk about yourself and tell someone about who you are and why this work is so important to you.
I see. So it's not just looking for something, but expressing, articulating who you are.
Right. When you've asked yourself, some important questions, when someone asks you why you're interested in this opportunity, it allows you to tell a bigger story about yourself, and it then allows the person to understand that you've really thought very deeply about the work.
I see. So when people are invited to interview, they think that that's the big impression to make. But I think from your saying, the resume makes a first impression.
It does. And that's why, that's where the title of the book came from, If Your Resume Could Talk. Looking at, many resumes over the course of my career, I always have questions, and I'm sure, you do, and everyone does. When you're reading a piece of paper, there are questions that come in your mind. Wow, I wonder why someone did this, or how much experience do they have? There's different details you wish you could gather from the resume. And so this is where I really emphasize the importance of actually the words and how the content of one's resume is presented, because there are ways that it can be presented that makes a difference, and every word counts. Everyone,
yes,
right?
It can't be too long. Is this still true?
It is true. It shouldn't be too long, but at the same time, one's choice of words, the sequence in which the material is presented, all makes a difference.
Can you give us an example?
Yes. So for example, something as simple as your name, okay?
Yes.
We don't ask, let's say someone's name is Catherine, okay? Do they write Kathy? Do they write, Catherine? How do they want, that's an important question. What is the name that you wish to use professionally? So even though, one may select their formal name, but if they really preferred to be called Kathy, then would they not choose that name to put on their resume? Or it may involve the sequence of events, for example, whether something is, an internship or it's a full-time position. Clarity around that content is very important.
Yes, what you are actually seeking. Well, then that is interesting because I remember getting this bit of advice some years ago that your email address should,
Yes.
if it's for a professional work, choose an email address that is itself speaks more professionally. I had a friend in college that used her email address as Luscious Babe. And I think that really was something that we have to talk about, that we don't want that email
Exactly,
address.
right. And so that's where everything, even the email, the phone number, does one choose to include their address? In today's world where you're thinking about remote work, etc., if you write your specific address, is that a message you're sending? That, about your geographic preference. So everything that one chooses to include in their resume is important.
Wow, then how did writing your first book, your nonfiction book, and careers in healthcare and beyond, how did that help you write this one?
It was helpful in many ways. First of all, I think, being that it was my first book, it had all the challenges of, writing the first book, where do I start, et cetera. So what was helpful was that certainly I had the confidence, having written the first book, that I could, certainly pursue the second book. But also the first book set the foundation for the second book. In other words, the content that was really included in my first book provides, many of the key steps that are important to someone through the career exploration process. But because of the title, one may or may not have chosen to look at it. If they were not interested in a career in healthcare specifically, they might look at other resources. So I wanted to be certain to provide the content in a format that anyone at any stage in their career and with interest in any industry could consider looking at the book and could read it and could benefit from it. And so that I thought was very important.
I see, because the first book, I remember your first book having so many questions about asking yourself, are you, let's say, a more research person, or would you like the human contact? So those are getting to know yourself questions as well.
Correct. And those questions I've just found to be, incredibly helpful. And I, the context of the book is that sometimes people will ask you, can I have a coffee chat, and talk about my career. But the reality is that those questions really last over a period of weeks, months, even years. The career journey, right, is over a lifetime.
It's so true.
And so that's really, the purpose of the book is to really provide, one tool that one can really review at any point in their career, at any phase, and still have some helpful tips.
Well, then how do you keep this book so short?
Okay.
That must be a challenge, wouldn't you say?
Yes, I think it sort of reflects my personal approach to things. I think that it's really important, I feel, to really be able to get quickly to actionable items. So the book is short, but there's a lot of focus on next steps, right? When one is reading, I want to be able to highlight some opportunities, some examples, but then really help the reader embark on what they do next. And so
it's very much like a workbook.
it is. It is. It's
check off certain questions first and then go on to the next, or
Correct. It is like a workbook. It's the idea is that you go to the pages that you need, and you're right. You might pick a few questions, a few topics that are of interest to you, take action on them, and then come back and look for more, more information for what's next.
So did you work with a writers group, or was it a flow chart you start with? Or
Yeah.
What did you do?
Well, it's interesting. Working with a group is very helpful. I can't say that I worked specifically with a writers group, but I will say that I had a lot of support from writers and writing organizations to help me, coaching, people who coach writers. I would listen to webinars. I would take advantage of any opportunities to gain insights, especially when I needed just more. I would say just more inspiration. When we get stuck, right? Your
Yes.
writers get to like a point where sometimes they might have a writer's block, and so I really relied on just that camaraderie, working with other writers, talking to them. I have friends who are writers. There's a lot of group support in the
So-
writing journey.
Your group support is a particular group, or are you talking about just ad hoc one-on-one?
Well, I will share that I took advantage of a writer, a coach here in the Chicago area. Her name is Sarah Cannell, and I would join a number of her webinars.
Ah, I see.
And so they were very informative, and I've taken, one or two of her classes when she had workshops on writing. They were very inspirational for me to really, yeah.
Was she specialized in fiction or nonfiction, or was that clearly delineated?
I think she helps people write both, actually.
see.
Absolutely both. She's helped many writers. And as I said, though I did not specifically join her group, I definitely took advantage of all of the opportunities she provided to collaborate with other writers.
Well, it just depends on what kind of learner you are yourself. If you are a self-learner, you can pick up webinar tips and move further ahead. I think that speaks for itself.
Yes, yeah, and that was I like just-in-time learning, and so her resources were really always available to me. Even though I wasn't part of her formal group, I was able to tap into it, and so I really appreciate that support.
And did you go with your same publisher as you did the
I
first
did,
one?
yes. Routledge, Taylor and Francis was really very kind and gracious to help me with publishing my second book.
Would you recommend others to seek Rutler, or?
Routledge, yes,
Routledge, I'm sorry.
absolutely. They were a very good publisher to work with.
And do you have a website, or does all the marketing for the book, is it done through Rutledge then?
Yes, the Routledge Taylor and Francis has a website, so the book is promoted there. It's also available on Amazon, and so people do have access to purchase
So
the
you
book.
didn't have to set up yourself then?
No, I didn't,
That's
but that
really
option is
good.
always available, and so
Do you
yes.
use social media, or?
For not specifically for the book, so
I see. And do you pitch your book on LinkedIn, perhaps, because so many people are looking for jobs on LinkedIn?
yes. Though the book is available, under my personal
LinkedIn page.
profile.
I see. So what are some stories or things that you learned about yourself through this book, through working on this book, I suppose?
Yeah, I learned that I really enjoyed the writing process. I never would have described myself as a writer to begin with, but as I wrote, I found that I really enjoyed the art of writing and putting together information in a way that is helpful to others. I also learned that there are many steps that one goes through, and I learned about myself that I've gone through, obviously, many of the steps as well that I talk about in the book. And so it was, I learned about myself as well as others as I was writing.
So these action items are from your personal trial and true and tried.
Absolutely. I do include some of my own personal stories in the book. Because I think that's what helps a reader learn.
Oh yes, yes.
The most.
Especially when if they're changing careers, it can be a very foggy time, and they don't know what would be the next step.
Correct.
Well, Evelyn, what are some reader responses you received?
Yeah, I've received very positive feedback. There are a number of people who I've had someone people reach out to me through LinkedIn and just say, your book was very helpful as I was looking at career pivots. People have read it and just a very positive response that it was helpful. And so I know that my book is in many people's hands. And so I feel very confident that it's helping others.
Do you have actual examples of other people's resume or in there? In the book?
I did not include resumes in the book specifically because that's where I think the resume writing itself as a topic is a book in and
yes,
of itself.
Of course. It is a separate. Yeah.
Right. And I didn't want to necessarily advocate one specific format because it varies depending on the industry that one is working in or their personal style. So the resume format itself, I've left really up to the individual reader. But I did highlight very specifically, as we talked about, like with emails or whatnot, things to be very mindful of as they're formalizing the content.
So do's and don'ts are definitely
correct
in there.
And what things could mean.
I see. Well, and do you well, I guess resumes are so much just posted on LinkedIn now. Do you think that that is something people should review before they post one? Because shouldn't they be putting out a resume for a specific job?
I think there's probably one actually needs to have many different resumes on hand. Certainly customized for specific jobs, as well as a general resume for LinkedIn. I think that it's important to be able to present yourself to various audiences.
Well, what kind of advice do you have for people who are writing nonfiction, a type of this workbook? I feel like you need to be very organized to do that. I don't think that's my strength.
Oh, no, it's possible for everyone. But, to write a nonfiction, some of the challenges are that certainly there's a lot of facts, right? You're not creating ideas. But yet, at the same time, one needs to be creative because you're telling stories still about real life, about real information. And how do you make that information still very interesting to the reader? So that is, I think, the greatest challenge. But yet, that's where it also becomes an art as well, is how to make that content appealing.
Oh, yes. I think the human touch is what you're advocating for people to look at your resume as part of yourself.
Right. I'm encouraging thought and inquiry and, encouraging people to reach out for more information. So though it's, it's a nonfiction, it's not meant to be flat either. It's meant to take life in someone's hands, that they're supposed to take action after reading, my materials.
So it is a creative exercise, isn't
it? It is.
Because we're always evolving, or we may not think this job is, let's say, we might think it's perfect for us. But then if you look at your own personal history or interests or amount of time you have, perhaps, it may not be the best thing. So I guess I'm thinking that your book is really encourage people to be self-reflective.
That's correct, Yvonne, absolutely. It is creativity for the individual as well, to think about their life and how they might be creative about what they do. It doesn't mean, you talk about career transitions, pivoting. It doesn't mean that one needs to make major changes either. Okay, so the book is not advocating that. But yet at the same time, everyone wants to do something different, right? Yes. They just want to take a different approach even to their everyday work. And so how can they make it interesting? And this is what, these are some of the questions that I try to highlight, that, what can someone learn differently, in a week, on the job? How can they approach perhaps their managers or mentors to get different insights?
So this is a opportunity for growth.
Absolutely. Yeah. One of the chapters explores that, what are the growth opportunities? And the idea is that how do we inspire, someone to really take a look and be honest about, what's out there, what can they learn or do differently?
What do you think the role of so many people working from home, how does that, let's say, reduce the creativity or finding mentors, for example. I feel like all the mentors I found was through work with, not from home, let's say.
Okay.
So do you think that this work from home is reducing the opportunities for people to find mentors?
I don't think it has to. I think that it can if one chooses to only work by themselves all the time.
Yeah.
But yet, certainly, there are still ways to reach out to other people. And so, that virtual connection, virtual introduction, conversations, that can still happen. I'll also add that though one works from home, I talk a lot about networking as well.
Yes.
One could go somewhere after working from home.
Yeah.
So going to a networking meeting, just finding opportunities to connect with people in person is quite beneficial as well. So I think there's definitely opportunities.
I think networking has changed entirely, right, after this working from home.
Right. Yes, and it probably it's different, but I think people it takes a little more effort perhaps to look for the opportunities to network, because you're right, as you were saying, there may have been times where you would just run into someone in the hallway or something. This takes perhaps just a little more effort, but yet still very possible.
Very interesting. Well, because I think that when you work from home, somehow you have more control of your own time, but then you need to now make decisions to look for the mentors.
Correct.
Instead of
That,
Well, let's see. What connects you to Glenview?
Glenview, I have been active. I've been a part of this community in terms of just, though I don't live here, I definitely visit the community quite often. I support many of the businesses. I go to the library. I think the library has been a huge connector for me. I really appreciate the book sale.
The used bookstore?
The used bookstore there.
Yeah.
I just have learned so much.
Oh, yes.
I think it's expanded. It's expanded my perspective on books, because I feel like when I'm in the used bookstore, I'm in the private library of the community. And so that's been just really very heartwarming for me.
Well, what advice or quotes you have for our audience?
Yeah, if I can share
Yes,
something,
please.
there is a quote that I have kept really right by my side throughout my writing process. It's a quote by Nelson Mandela, and it says, "It always seems impossible until it's done."
Wow.
And that's something I would really remind someone as they're embarking upon a writing project, that when you're first starting with your first blank page or writing your outline, you wonder where it might take you, but it's always step by step. Working consistently is most helpful.
Wow. I think I sense that, because when we are, let's say, receive a project, sometimes we say, oh, we're not ready for this. It's just way beyond my level. But then you start working on it, and then it seems impossible, but there it is, right? But it just takes time to get there. Well, Evelyn, that's a great quote. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yes, Yvonne, I'd like to share that someone had told me that if the book even made a difference in one person's life, it's worth the time to write that book to help someone.
Wow, that is a great way to interpret the success of an author. Well, thank you, Evelyn.
Thank you, Yvonne. It's been such a pleasure to be here and an honor to be on your show.
I'm glad that you're back, and I hope you'll come back again with your third book.
Okay, thank you.
And thank you for watching. Join us next time on Off the Shelf.